What's up, guys? It's Caleb here with the Wizards of Moon's Cave, and thought I would bring you guys a little deck I put together for the upcoming Lorwyn set for the backup commander for the -1/-1 counters precon, the Reaper, King No More. Personally, I've never built a theft deck and thought this would be a really interesting concept since it's not your typical theft deck where you're stealing off top of somebody's library and having them exile or discard cards. Um, so yeah, we'll start off with the commander of the deck. It's the Reaper, King No More. It is a Jund commander, a legendary artifact creature, Scarecrow. And whenever the Reaper enters, you put a -1/-1 counter on each of up to two target creatures. And most importantly, whenever a creature an opponent controls with a -1/-1 counter on it dies, you may put that card onto the battlefield under your control. Do this only once each turn. So, what are we trying to achieve with this deck? Our game plan is going to be to put as many -1/-1 counters on as many creatures as possible, and then try to get as many of these triggers of dies triggers of opponent's creatures as possible. We have a once per turn limit, but as you'll see here in a moment, we've got a few ways to get around that. So yeah, we're going to start off looking at a few different ways to put -1/-1 counters on our opponent's creatures, um, be it through combat or other means. We'll start off here with Black Sun's Zenith. So this is going to be a pseudo board wipe in a way. Um, we have a basically a repeatable board wipe if needed, but what we're trying to do here is put -1/-1 counters on creatures. And so I figured this kind of fits on theme, gives us a board wipe, and also achieves what we're looking for with -1/-1 counters on creatures. Notably too, this will affect our own creatures, but ideally, if we need a board wipe, we're probably going to be wiping our own boards as well. And this gets around a lot of different things such as hexproof, indestructible, that sort of thing. So Black Sun Zenith seems like a perfect addition here for as our board wipe in our deck. Um, we have Blowfly Infestation. Whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from play, if it had a -1/-1 counter on it, put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. This card here also can combo off with a couple of different cards in the deck, as we've got ways that whenever -1/-1 counters are put on the creatures, we generate a creature, and with things as we'll get into, such as um, any kind of effects that have dice triggers on creatures, this is a perfect way to just close out games if necessary. And so yeah, it seems like a perfect include in the deck. We do have a couple cards that are included in the precon, such as the Carnifex Demon. Enters the battlefield with two -1/-1 counters on it. You can pay a black, remove a -1/-1 counter from it, and put a -1/-1 counter on each creature. This is another way that we can easily attach -1/-1 counters on a variety of creatures across the board, and just seemed like with it being in the precon, it seemed like an excellent piece to leave in. Contagion Engine, again, when it enters, we put a -1/-1 counter on each creature target player controls. If we've got a player that's really running the way with a lot of different creatures, this kind of gives us an option here to knock them down. Token players as well. This is a good way to just clear out a lot of their tokens and things like that. And then we also have the option to proliferate if we have extra mana laying around. Corrosive Mentor. Black creatures you control have Wither. We actually have a lot of creatures in here that provide Wither or have Wither innate. Things such as Kolrath Knight. It has Wither. It also is a way for us to easily get through on creatures, as if our opponent's control have counters on them, which is their entire strategy, they will not be able to block. This also gives us an opportunity to swing in with things such as Hapatra, Vizier of Poisons. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, I can put a -1/-1 counter on a target creature. Notably, it doesn't have to be a creature they control. Uh, so this allows us some variation, but it allows us basically to get in and get through with those creatures. Furthermore, whenever one or more -1/-1 counters are put on a creature, you create a 1/1 green snake creature token with Death Touch. So again, another excellent way for us to build up a board state, have some blockers if necessary, and yeah, so they with all of our other opponents not being able to block, if they wanted to try to swing on us, this would be an excellent deterrent. As obviously too, if we're able to steal creatures, if they die and we have Death Touch blockers, excellent opportunity for us to steal creatures. We also included things like the Necro Skitter. again, Wither, but it also is basically a second form of our commander. So if our commander does get taken out, and we're having a hard time bringing our commander back into play, we have this as a backup, which is essentially the same effect. Whenever a creature an opponent controls the -1/-1 counter on it dies, you may return that card to the battlefield under your control. So again, just more ways to steal opponent's creatures. We also have Persistent Constrictor. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, they lose 1 life, and you put a -1/-1 counter on up to one target creature they control. It also has Persist, and if we're not putting -1/-1 counters on our own creatures, which we do in some strategies, but there might be times where we just got this guy out there. This allows us to bring this guy back, gives him an extra level of protection, and we also have ways to remove counters in a few different ways as well. So this is an excellent include. As every upkeep, we're putting a -1/-1 counter on an opponent's creature, and basically allowing us to further our game plan of shrinking everybody else's board and possibly getting us some targets to steal. We also have a really cool card here, and Spitting Dilophosaurus. Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, put a -1/-1 counter up to one target creature. Again, any creature on the board, we can put a -1/-1 counter on, and this also allows us to get through similar to the Kolrath Knight, where creatures your opponents control with -1/-1 counters on them cannot block. So again, an excellent way of evasion, allowing us to get through and ensuring that we've got things like that. Um, some more cards from the precon itself is the Scorpion God and Village Pillagers. Two really awesome cards in this deck. When a creature with -1/-1 counter on it dies, draw a card. Again, we're looking to always remove one creature on their side of the board. If we have ways to remove creatures on our side of the board, such as some of the ones we're creating, and they die, this is an excellent way for us to draw a lot of cards and refill our hand and things like that. Also, too, because it's in that God cycle. We have whenever it dies, you return it to its owner's hand. So again, excellent way for us to retain this guy and making sure that we can consistently replay him if he does get removed. And then also too, the Village Pillagers has Wither, and when this creature enters, it deals 1 damage to each creature your opponents control. Notably with Wither, this is basically putting a -1/-1 counter on each creature your opponents control. And when a creature an opponent controls with a counter on it dies, you create a tap treasure token. So an awesome way to build up some ramp and things like that. Um, Another very easy include for this deck was Yawgmoth Thran Physician. Um, you can pay 1 life, sacrifice a creature, and put a -1/-1 counter on up to one target creature and draw a card. This is a really awesome include as well, with things like the Scorpion God, with things like Hepatra, that just allow us to create a board state. We're putting -1/-1 counters on creatures, and we can essentially draw our entire deck, or as much life as we have. Um, we can just continue to draw cards and find what we need to find with these two pieces here. Put a -1/-1 counter on a creature. We create a 1/1. We put another -1/-1 counter on that creature. It dies. We draw a card, and we can continue to do that till we dig through our deck and find what we're looking for. Another thing too is if we've got an opponent with a bunch of tokens, mix them with Village Pillagers. Well, every time one of those creatures dies, we're also generating a tap treasure token. So, lots of ramp. We can really set ourselves up in a really good way here. Two final cards here that we'll take a look at is Midnight Banshee, again Wither, and then at the beginning of your upkeep, put a -1/-1 counter on each non-black creature. As you can tell, most of our creatures here include black in them, and so we're basically protected. Our board state is mostly protected outside of village pillagers and things like that. But for the most part, our board is going to be protected, and we'll be able to kind of just get through and just basically load up our opponent's creatures. Harbinger of Night as well. During your upkeep, put a -1/-1 counter on each creature. Just another excellent way for us to put those counters on creatures. Alright, so now we get into the -1/-1 payoffs in the deck. These are ways that when we're applying counters to creatures, our creatures, opponents' creatures, whatever it may be, we're going to have payoffs in some way, shape, or form. So a lot of these cards also combo off with some of our, -1/-1 counter cards we showed a moment ago. And so just really cool interactions all around, and you'll be having triggers flying all over the place. One such card is actually the face commander for the precon itself, Auntie Ool, Curse Wretch. It's got Ward, Blight 2, And to Blight 2, a player puts two -1/-1 counters on a creature they control. And then it says when one or more -1/-1 counters are put on a creature, you draw a card if you control that creature. If you don't control that creature, its controller loses one life. So this goes really, really, really well with things like um, Hapatra, things like Yawgmoth when we're putting -1/-1 counters on creatures, we're sacrificing creatures, things like that. Just ways for us to generate tokens, thing for us to draw more cards, and then again drawing more cards down here. Also, too, if we combine that in with things such as the Harbinger of Night, if somebody's got 20 creatures on board and we put a -1/-1 counter on each of those 20 creatures, we're doing 20 damage to somebody's face just like that. So all in all, a really awesome card, a lot of really good interactions, and pretty much no matter what we're doing with the cards up here, in some way, shape, or form, Auntie Ool is going to be triggering. So all in all, it's a really awesome card to include in the deck. You can also swap out the commanders, Reaper and Auntie Ool. Auntie Ool, I think this deck is built more for Reaper, and we'll get into why in just a moment. But Auntie Ool, nonetheless, is a really awesome card, and strongly encourage maybe flipping these guys around if you want to try this deck out and just seeing what you can do with either one. Going into some more -1/-1 payoffs, we have Crumbling Ashes. At the end of your upkeep, destroy a target creature with -1/-1 counter on it. So basically, at your upkeep, regardless of what you got on board, you're guaranteed to get at least one creature steal right here from the Crumbling Ashes. So long as we've got a -1/-1 counter on a creature we want and we control their Reaper, that's a creature that we can essentially destroy, targeted removal, and we get to steal that creature and add that creature to our board. Um, Another cool piece here is Flourishing Defenses. When a -1/-1 counter is placed on a creature, you may put a 1/1 green elf warrior into play. Again, just a really awesome way for us to generate a board state, to get us more sacrifice outlets for things like Yawgmoth, more targets for our own creatures to put -1/-1 counters on to draw more cards, or again, we just build up a massive board state and do some really cool stuff. Generous Patron, some really awesome card draw here. Whenever one or more counters are put on a creature you don't control, draw a card. It's kind of funny that it's called Generous Patron when in reality we're basically blighting an opponent's board, but nonetheless, a really awesome card here. And finally, we have Nest of Scarabs. It says whenever you put one or more -1/-1 counters on a creature, create that many 1/1 black insect creature tokens. So just like Flourishing Defenses, this is just another way for us to generate a board state, give us more sacrifice pieces, and just give us more fodder here or there that we can use to target things. And now we move into ways to basically blink or duplicate our commander. This basically gives us more triggers to allow us to steal more than one creature per turn cycle. And with a lot of these pieces here, it's just an awesome way for us to essentially, you know, get as many triggers as possible with our creature. And so now we move into ways to blink or duplicate our commander's effect. With our commander saying that we can only steal one creature per turn, we obviously want to try to abuse that and do that as much as possible. And so we've got a couple ways to blink the commander. We've got a couple ways to duplicate the commander, and just get as many triggers as possible when steal as many creatures as we possibly can from our opponent's board. Some ways we're going to do that are things like the Conjurer's Closet. It says at the beginning of your end step, you may exile target creature you control, then return that creature to the battlefield under your control. This is a really awesome way to, if we have a way to destroy a creature at instant speed that has a -1/-1 counter on it, we can destroy a creature, steal one. At our end step, we blink our commander. It enters. We add two more -1/-1 counters to creatures, and then we can get another trigger if we have another way to instant speed destroy another creature. Again, this is giving us one extra activation of our commander's ability. This is adding more -1/-1 counters to other people's creatures, and just all in all, just a really cool piece. Cloudstone Curio is another good piece. Whenever a non-artifact permanent enters the battlefield under your control, you may return another permanent you control that shares a permanent type with it to its owner's hand. We've got plenty of ways to, perhaps recast our commander. This is an excellent way for us to blink our commander back. If we have ways to destroy opponent's creatures at instant speed, we can steal an opponent's creature, And then with that ability on the stack, whenever that creature enters the battlefield under our control, we then can blink our commander back to our hands as a form of protection as well to avoid commander attacks. So a little bit more niche here or there, but nonetheless another way for us to return our commander back, allow it to re-enter, and then get more -1/-1 counters and reset the ability. Golden Argosy here is a pretty neat include. Whenever it attacks, exile each creature that crewed it this turn, return them to the battlefield tapped under their owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So similar to Conjurer's Closet, this is going to allow us to blink our commander and have that commander come back into place or come back into play. We also can crew it with more than just our commander if we have more ETB effects that we'd like to have go off. Just another way to really get more ETBs, get more things of that nature, add more counters, steal more creatures, and things like that. Helm of the Host is just a way for us to duplicate our commander, get more triggers of our commander's ability, get more -1/-1 counters, and just all in all, just build another board state. Another really cool to include here to include on our commander. And then finally, we have Sword of Hearth and Home. It's a way for us to blink our commander, as well as we grab another land if we need one. And just all in all, a really awesome piece. Allows us to get another trigger mid combat or after combat. So if we have things on board like Sword of Hearth and Home, as well as Conjurer's Closet, um, we can get an activation of our commander in our first main phase, second main phase, and our end step. So we're still in 3 creatures on our turn alone. All in all, a really awesome way there to just get a lot of utility out of our commander. Um, get more -1/-1 counters on opponent's creatures, and again, also add in some ramp here or there. Just a really cool thing in general to do. Next, we'll move into card draw. We've got quite a bit of pieces of card draw in different ways. We also have some pretty interesting things we can do here or there with a couple of new effects, a couple of old effects we've seen for a while, but all in all, some really cool pieces here. We'll start off with Bolas's Citadel. Uh, very popular card here, but um, basically allows us to get card advantage in the form of looking at the top of our library and casting cards from the top of our library. We're also going to be generating a lot of tokens. We're also going to be, stealing our opponent's creatures. This allows us to have a sack outlet and burn our opponent some more, especially if we're building up a big board of 1/1s and we want to try to finish the game out that way. We can tap Bolas's Citadel to sack some of those 1/1s we're creating and just absolutely burn our opponents up. Next, we have Glissa, Sunslayer. It's got First Strike and Death Touch, which makes it pretty unique in itself in the fact that basically we've got a guaranteed blocker every time. We're more than likely always going to get in with Glissa because no matter what creature they block with, we're going to be able to kill that creature with the First Strike and Death Touch. Um, and basically, when we get a combat damage trigger with Glissa, we get one of 3 options. We can destroy an enchantment, so it gives us removal. We can remove 3 counters from target permanent. So if we've got a large creature on our board that's got a bunch of -1/-1 counters, we can remove those counters to keep that creature around longer. Or we can draw a card, so it gives us some card draw there. We also have Greater Good. Ultimately, we're going to be stealing our opponent's creatures, and so this gives us a way to, if we have a creature that has a good ETB, but that's basically it, this allows us to sacrifice that creature to draw some cards, do some filtering, and discard a couple cards we may not need. But just an excellent sacrifice outlet, an excellent way to dig through our deck. This card could be an all-star in the deck, as hopefully we've got things like a Galta that we're stealing or things like that we can really just snipe off somebody's board, steal, sacrifice, draw 12 cards, and just really just run away with the game at that point. Phyrexian Arena, the classic, gives us a card draw, an additional card draw at our upkeep. Just all in all, a really cool card. Sinister Gnarlback is a new card from the precon. We blight 1 on our own board and draw a card. So again, this gives us a way to sacrifice one of our 1/1s for some of our death triggers that we'll show in a moment. And just all in all, just a really awesome piece here. And then finally, we have Toski. We're going to be stealing our opponent's creatures. We're going to be swinging with them. We're going to be swinging with things like Glissa. So this just gives us some guaranteed card draw. We're going to be swinging in. So ultimately, a really good piece here that allows us to draw cards on things we're going to be wanting to do anyway, which is going to be swinging with our creatures. So a really cool thing to do here. And then we're going to move into some death triggers. Obviously, with us looking to remove creatures off opponents' boards, with us, sacrificing our own creatures, we want ways to make that easier for us, and then also get some payoffs for those creatures dying. And now we're going to look at some death triggers. Within these death triggers, I've also included some removal as well, but ultimately these are just ways for us to capitalize off of these creatures we're going to be sacrificing, creatures we're going to be killing, and things like that. Um, all in all, there's some really cool pieces here, and a lot of good synergy with the other cards in our deck. One awesome piece here is Agatha's Soul Cauldron. What we're going to be doing here, we don't have a ton of ways innately to be adding 1/1 counters to our creatures. However, the Cauldron itself gives us a way to add 1/1 counters to some of our creatures, and we could be stealing creatures off of our opponent's boards to be able to, capitalize off of those abilities, and we could be exiling from graveyards. We're going to be having a lot of stuff go to the graveyard, and so this is a really awesome way for us to essentially steal those abilities and use them for ourselves. We also have Assassin's Trophy, allows us to destroy a creature if we don't have a way to quickly remove a creature on an opponent's board, but we really want to steal that creature before our commander gets removed. We can Assassin's Trophy a creature to be able to steal that creature and put it on our own board. Similarly, with Burnt Offering, if we steal a large creature, we can sacrifice it to Burnt Offering and make a ton of mana to be able to cast some stuff out of our hand. With a lot of our death triggers, we're going to be drawing a bunch of cards off of that stuff. We're going to be having ways to use that mana, and the idea is we should always have something in our hand that we can cast with this when we steal something. Um, we also, another item or good target for that sacrifice could be something like Crash. When another creature dies, you may put X +1/+1 counters on Crash, where X was the creature's power. So whether we're just sacrificing a 1/1 to Phyrexian Altar or putting a -1/-1 counter on it, um, those are awesome ways that we can, do things like that and build up a board state. But, Burnt Offering can be a really awesome way there to get 10 mana. Or say we have Crash at like a 15 power creature, we can sacrifice from the Burnt Offering, get 15 power, or 15 mana in red and black, and then use that to cast a variety of whatever we have in our hand, basically dump our hand. Um, so a really, all in all, really awesome piece here as well to capitalize and just to give us another threat on board from cards that we're actually going to be playing and not stealing. Maha Feathers is Knight. Um, is a really cool include here. Basically, anytime we put a -1/-1 counter on an opponent's creature, they're going to be instantly removed. This is a really cool control piece, kind of a mean piece to include here, but I figured, hey, we're stealing people's creatures, we're shrinking everybody's board, might as well go ahead and fit the villain arc, right? So went ahead and included Maha. I think it's a really awesome card and definitely one that is a good include in this deck. Phyrexian Altar, again, a sacrifice outlet, allows us to make 1 mana. Maybe not as powerful, in my opinion, as Greater Good in this deck, but still allows us to generate mana. We can trigger things like our Blood Artist effects that can get us some life. This is also a great Blood Artist, speaking of, is a great include for things like Yawgmoth that can mitigate some of that life loss, and just all in all, a really awesome piece. We also have Grim Haruspex, um, which, when another non-token creature you control dies, draw a card. Another good card draw piece here, and if we have ways to sacrifice creatures, this is basically just, an easy way for us to steal an opponent's creature, get a card draw off of it if we steal something that's not very good, and things like that. So again, just a really awesome way for us to steal some creatures. And then we've got another piece here from the precon, Grave Venerations. When this enchantment enters, you become the monarch. At the beginning of your end step, if you are the monarch, return up to one target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. When a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life, and then you gain 1 life. So, if we do happen to sacrifice something like Crash to Burnt Offering and make a bunch of mana, then Grave Venerations could basically allow us to bring Crash back, and then we can capitalize off those death triggers again, grow Crash again, and then just basically keep using him for things like Greater Good or Burnt Offerings to draw more cards, to um, generate more mana, and things like that. So just a really cool recursion piece there. It just allows us to get our creatures back if we have to sacrifice our own, and just a really awesome way for us to kind of recur some pieces back. Next, we're going to look at some game enders. These are basically ways that we can look to win the game at some point. Um, could be a variety of different ways, um, but ultimately, what we're trying to do is steal creatures, get a big board state, and then swing out, right? So I figured Insurrection would be an awesome include in this deck. You untap all creatures and gain control of them until end of turn. They gain haste. So again, a great pseudo board wipe, but basically we're just going to steal everything. We're going to give everything haste, and we're going to swing out. If nobody has any blockers, it's just an excellent way for us to get through and finish the game off. On a similar vein, we have Triumph of the Hordes. Until end of turn, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample and infect. If we've got enough power on the board, we have at least 30 power. We can swing out at all of our opponents, give everybody 10 poison counters, and win the game that way. Not really going on a big infect theme here, but I figured with this being an awesome game ender, or if we need to find a way to make a lot of or add a lot of -1/-1 counters to creatures, giving everything infect is just another way for us to add more -1/-1 counters on the creatures if we need be. And then finally, we have Vraska, Betrayal Sting. This came in the precon, but this gives us some more card draw, some proliferation. We can turn creatures into treasures on the opponent's board, and then if we happen to get it up to a to 9 loyalty, we can ultimate Vraska, which would allow us to give everybody 9 poison counters, and then we can find a way there to proliferate if we need to. But all in all, an awesome include in this deck. Does kind of exactly what we're looking for with proliferation, with the -1/-1 counters. A possible game ender at the bottom, but wanted to include Vraska here as well. And now we get to what really inspired me to put this deck together, which is our pingers, which is basically our ways for us to instantly steal opponents' creatures at instant speed on every single turn if need be. Um, the one of the obvious pieces was, and interestingly enough, it got reprinted as a special guest in the set, is Goblin Sharpshooter. When a creature control dies, or when a creature dies, untap this creature, and you can tap deal 1 damage to any target. This is an awesome piece in this deck. You give it Death Touch, and you basically can, at instant speed, destroy any creature on the spot. So we've got Basilisk Collar and Gorgon Flail. Uh, this also works with Wither as well. If we give our creatures Wither, this could be an easy way to add a -1/-1 counter to a creature. And if that creature dies, we untap Goblin Sharpshooter, and then we can steal that creature once it dies. So, all in all, a really awesome effect, something we're looking to do anyway, and truthfully, this is what kind of inspired me to build the deck in the first place. Orcish Bowmasters was just another, to me, include. I'm keeping this in the bracket 3 zone, and so I had another room, had more room for another game changer. Included Orcish Bowmasters since it kind of does the exact same thing, and we can use this if our opponents are drawing a lot of cards. We can basically ping down opponents' creatures, add -1/-1 counters if we give them Wither, or we can give it Death Touch and steal creatures once per turn if need be. So all in all, a really awesome piece here, and just something that it just kind of seemed like an obvious piece. These two pieces here were kind of what inspired me to build the deck in the first place, but ended up becoming a lot cooler and a lot stronger than I thought it was going to be. So, all in all, really awesome little interaction here and kind of fits perfectly in what we're trying to do. Now we get into our ramp section. Pretty standard ramp package here, Arcane Signet and Soul Ring. Lots of ways to find some additional lands, and then we've got things like Ignoble Hierarch, Birds of Paradise, and then Selvala as well. Selvala actually comes in the precon, and I figured with us stealing creatures, with us including things like Kresh, this is a way for us to make a lot of mana. With us stealing creatures as well, we have ways for us to draw cards if those power and toughness are higher than any other creature on the board. And, if we're stealing the biggest creature on the board and enters the battlefield under our control, we draw a card off of Selvala. So, seemed like a no-brainer here as well. But outside of that, just a pretty standard ramp package, um, getting some additional lands and stuff like that. And then finally, we get to our tutors. And so, since like I mentioned, one of the main inspirations was our Goblin Sharpshooter and Orcish Bowmaster effects. I was trying to think of ways that we can more readily get those cards and get those into play faster. So included things like birthing pod allows us to find our best creatures depending on what we're sacrificing, and allows us to basically go out and get whatever we're needing to get. Um, Chord of Calling, again, we can use Convoke at instant speed. So if we're stealing a bunch of creatures, we have a bunch of 1/1s. We can do this at instant speed, go grab our best creatures or whatever we may need to get, put it immediately on the board, and just all in all, a really awesome way to go find what we're needing to get and have some kind of instant speed interaction as we can keep a lot of creatures up and just use that Convoke cost to play Chord of Calling. We're already looking to sacrifice creatures, so Diabolic Intent seemed like an auto include here. Um, we can sacrifice a creature, search the library for a card, put it in our hand, and shuffle. So again, an awesome tutor doing exactly what we're trying to do anyway, which is sacrifice creatures. So you can use that 1/1 for fodder, sacrifice it, go grab our best creature, good to go. And then Worldly Tutor just allows us to go find any creature at instant speed. Um, awesome card. Not really much else to say there. And then we've got a pretty basic land package here. I'm running 36 lands, just a pretty standard land package all around, um, but try to fill out our mana curve and fit in what we needed to get here. So all around, just got our lands. So yeah, guys, that is the Reaper King No More deck. I think it's going to be a really awesome deck to play. As soon as I saw it, felt like I had to build this deck, and have got it in paper. Well, on the way in paper, and I'm getting really excited to get this guy rolling. So let me know what you guys think. Um, Anything you guys may would add to the deck that might fit in that I may have missed, anything like that, feel free to leave it in the comments. But all in all, seems like a really fun deck to play. If you're wanting to build a theft deck and you don't necessarily want to exile stuff off top of somebody's library, this seems like a really awesome way. Yeah, you can only steal creatures, but there's a lot of really impactful creatures in Magic nowadays, so I feel like this is just an awesome deck all around to allow us to steal our opponent's creatures, use our opponent's creatures for, sacrifice fodder, or just swing right back at them. So, yeah, again, let me know what you guys think. If there's any cards you guys think would be awesome includes in the deck, feel free to leave them below. And if you guys enjoy these kind of deck breakdowns, let us know in the comments. We've got a lot of really awesome decks in our play group that we would love to share with you guys, so feel free to share those and let us know y'all's thoughts. But yeah, thanks for watching, and hope to catch you guys in the next one. Peace.